My name is Margaret Rose Thornton, and I am 69 years old. The moment that changed everything happened on Christmas Eve. In the dining room I had decorated with my own hands, at the table where I had served thousands of family meals over 43 years. That was the moment my daughter-in-law decided to announce, in front of my entire family, that she was putting me in a nursing home. But what she didn't know, what none of them knew, would turn that announcement into the biggest mistake of her life. Let me start at the beginning because every story worth telling needs context. Every betrayal has a history. And mine started long before that Christmas dinner. I married Thomas Thornton when I was 22 years old. He was 24, fresh out of college with a degree in engineering and dreams bigger than our tiny apartment could hold. We had nothing but each other and a determination to build something meaningful. Thomas worked at a manufacturing plant during the day and took freelance drafting jobs at night. I worked as a secretary and took in sewing on the weekends. We saved every penny. We lived on rice and beans and love. We slept on a mattress on the floor and told ourselves we were camping indoors. And slowly, painfully slowly, we built a life. 3 years into our marriage, Thomas designed a component for industrial machinery that revolutionized the manufacturing process. His company tried to buy the patent from him for $5,000. Thomas, my brilliant, stubborn Thomas, said no. He borrowed money from everyone we knew, mortgaged our future, and started his own company to produce the component himself. It was the scariest time of our lives. We were $50,000 in debt. Debt we couldn't possibly repay if the business failed. I remember lying awake at night, listening to Thomas breathe beside me, wondering if we had just destroyed our lives before they had really begun. But we hadn't. The component was brilliant. Orders started coming in. Then more orders. Then contracts with major manufacturers. Within 5 years, Thornton Industrial Solutions was worth $2 million. Within 10 years, $10 million. Within 20 years, we were one of the largest suppliers of industrial components in the country. But here's what people don't understand about wealth. Having money didn't change who we were. Thomas still woke up at 5 a.m. every day to go to the factory floor. I still clipped coupons and darned socks and made casseroles from leftovers. We lived in the same modest house we'd bought when our son Michael was born. We drove reliable cars, not fancy ones. We gave generously to charity but anonymously. We believed in hard work, humility, and not flaunting what we had. Michael was born when I was 28. He was perfect. 10 tiny fingers, 10 tiny toes, and Thomas's intelligent eyes. We poured everything into raising him right. Not spoiling him with the wealth we had accumulated, but teaching him values. Hard work, integrity, kindness. Thomas used to say, "Margaret, we need to raise a man who would be a good person even if he had nothing. Money can disappear tomorrow. Character is forever." So we did. Michael had chores. He earned his allowance. He wore hand-me-downs from cousins even though we could have bought him a new wardrobe every month. He worked summers at the factory, starting on the floor, learning every job from the ground up. He was a good boy, kind boy. He helped elderly neighbors with their groceries. He tutored struggling students for free. He volunteered at the animal shelter every Saturday. Thomas and I would look at each other over the dinner table, watching our son talk animatedly about his day, and we'd smile. We had done it right. Then Michael went to college. A prestigious university where the tuition cost more than many people earned in a year. We paid it gladly, proud that our son was getting opportunities we never had. But something changed there. He started coming home different. More concerned with brands, more aware of wealth, more embarrassed by our modest house and old furniture. "Dad, why don't you drive a Mercedes?" he asked Thomas once. "Everyone else's parents do." Thomas had looked at him steadily. "Son, I drive a car that gets me where I need to go safely. That's all a car needs to do. If you need a Mercedes to feel valuable, you're looking for value in the wrong place." Michael had flushed and looked away. But the seed had been planted. Then, in his senior year, Michael brought home a girl. Her name was Veronica Sterling, and from the moment she walked into our house, I knew she was trouble. Not because she was rude or mean, she was too smart for that. But because of the way she looked at our home. Her eyes had roamed over our modest furnishings, our old wallpaper, our worn carpet, and I saw something in her gaze. Calculation, assessment, judgment. "This is charming," she had said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Very rustic." Rustic. As if we lived in a barn. Thomas had squeezed my hand under the table. He saw it too. But Michael was in love. Or at least he was infatuated. Veronica was beautiful in that polished, expensive way. Blonde hair that had never seen a box of dye from the drugstore. Perfect teeth that spoke of expensive orthodontia. Designer clothes that probably cost more than our monthly grocery bill. She carried herself like someone who had never worried about money, never struggled, never known what it meant to choose between paying the electric bill and buying groceries. Her father owns Sterling Investments, Michael told us proudly. They're one of the biggest wealth management firms in the state. I had smiled and nodded and felt a cold dread in my stomach. Over the next few months, as Michael and Veronica's relationship grew serious, I watched my son change. He started making comments about our house. "Mom, don't you think it's time to upgrade? This kitchen is so outdated." He started dropping hints about his inheritance. "Dad's company must be worth a fortune by now. When you retire, Michael and I." He never finished those sentences, but I heard what he wasn't saying. "When can we have the money?" Thomas saw it too. One night, after a particularly uncomfortable dinner where Veronica had politely suggested we hire an interior decorator, Thomas sat me down. "Margaret," he said quietly, "I'm worried about our son." "I know," I whispered. "That girl is going to be trouble." "I know. But he loves her. And if we try to keep them apart, we'll lose him." Thomas was right. So we said nothing. We smiled and welcomed Veronica into our family, even though every instinct I had screamed that she was wrong for Michael. Even though I could see her mentally appraising every item in our house, calculating its value, planning its replacement. They got engaged 6 months later. Michael was 24. Veronica was 23. They wanted a big wedding. Very big. Very expensive. "Dad," Michael said, "I know traditional weddings are paid for by the bride's family, but Mr. Sterling suggested we might want to contribute since since we can afford it." "How much are we talking about?" Thomas asked carefully. "Well, Veronica's been dreaming of her wedding her whole life. The venue she wants costs $50,000 just for the day. Then there's catering, flowers, the band, her dress." "How much total, son?" Michael hesitated. "Maybe $200,000. I watched Thomas's face. We could afford it easily. But $200,000 for one day. For one party. That's a down payment on a house, Thomas said quietly. That's a college education. That's... "Dad, please," Michael interrupted. "This is important to Veronica. Plus, this is the only wedding we'll ever have." In the end, Thomas wrote a check for $100,000. "That's our contribution," he said firmly. "If the Sterlings want a more expensive wedding, they can pay for the difference." Mr. Sterling had laughed when he heard. "Well, I suppose that's generous for people in your situation." People in our situation. As if we were charity cases he was graciously tolerating. The wedding was spectacular. 250 guests. Sculptures. A 10-piece orchestra. Veronica wore a dress that cost more than my first car. She looked like a princess. Michael looked like a man who had won the lottery. And I sat in the front row, wearing a simple blue dress from Macy's, and smiled until my face hurt. After the wedding, things got worse. Veronica immediately began redecorating the modest condo they had bought. "Michael's parents gave us such a small down payment," she complained to anyone who would listen. "We could barely afford a one-bedroom in a decent neighborhood." Small down payment. Thomas had given them $150,000 for the condo. But apparently that wasn't enough. Then came the car. Veronica decided her 3-year-old Honda wasn't suitable for a woman of her position. She needed a BMW. New one. $65,000. Michael, surely your parents can help, she suggested sweetly. After all, what are parents for? Michael asked. Thomas said no. It was the first time he had ever refused our son anything he truly wanted. Son, Thomas said, your mother and I worked hard for our money. We're happy to help with necessities. But a $65,000 car is not a necessity. If Veronica wants a BMW, you can save for it or she can keep driving the perfectly good car she has. Michael had been angry. Really angry. Why are you being so cheap? You have millions. What does $65,000 matter to you? It's not about the money, Michael, Thomas said sadly. It's about the principle. It's about learning to appreciate what you have instead of always wanting more. But Michael didn't understand. Or maybe he didn't want to understand. He left our house that night barely speaking to us. And I knew, that Veronica was in his ear the whole drive home, telling him how unreasonable we were, how selfish, how we were keeping their money from them. Their money. As if they had earned it. As if they had worked for it. As if Thomas's decades of 16-hour days and my years of sacrifice had been done for them. The distance between us grew. Michael's visits became less frequent. Phone calls became shorter. Holidays became obligations rather than celebrations. And always there was Veronica in the background watching, calculating, waiting. Then Thomas got sick. Started small. Fatigue. Some weight loss. Nothing alarming. But Thomas was a man who had worked every day of his adult life. Fatigue wasn't normal for him. I made him see a doctor. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. Inoperable. The doctor gave him 6 months to a year. I remember sitting in that sterile office, holding Thomas's hand, watching our entire future collapse. 40 years of marriage. 40 years of partnership and love and building a life together. And it was ending. Too soon. Michael came to visit when we told him. He cried. He held his father and cried like a child. And for a moment I had hope. Maybe this tragedy would remind him of what mattered. Maybe this would bring back the son I had raised. But Veronica didn't cry. She sat in the corner of the living room, her face composed, her hands folded in her lap. And when she thought no one was looking, I saw her pull out her phone and start typing. Later I would wonder what she was typing, who she was texting, what calculations she was already making. Thomas lived for 8 months. 8 months of gradual decline. 8 months of pain managed by increasing doses of morphine. 8 months of me watching the love of my life fade away day by day. Michael came to visit every week at first. Then every 2 weeks. Then once a month. He was busy, he said. Work was demanding. Veronica wasn't feeling well. They were planning to start a family soon. Always excuses. But Thomas understood. He can't face it, he told me one night. His voice thin and weak. He can't face losing me. So he's protecting himself by staying away. You're being too generous, I said, anger and grief tangling in my chest. He should be here. You're his father. Margaret, promise me something. Anything. Don't let bitterness eat you up. Michael is still our son. He's just lost right now. That woman has her hooks in him. But underneath it all, he's still the boy we raised. Promise me you'll remember that. Promise. Because when the man you love is dying, you promise him anything. Thomas died on a Tuesday morning in April. The cherry blossoms were blooming outside our bedroom window. I was holding his hand. He opened his eyes one last time, smiled at me and whispered, "Best 40 years of my life." Then he was gone. Michael came to the funeral. He gave a lovely eulogy about his father's brilliance, his success, his generosity. People cried. I sat in the front row and felt nothing. Numbness had taken over. After the service, as people were offering condolences, Veronica pulled me aside. "Margaret," she said, her voice low, "we need to talk about Thomas's estate. Michael and I have been discussing it, and we think it would be best if we took over management of the company and the investments. You're going to be grieving, and these things are complicated. We don't want you to be burdened." I stared at her. My husband had been in the ground for less than 3 hours, and she was already trying to take control of his assets. "The estate is being handled by Thomas's attorney," I said coolly. "Everything is already arranged. But surely Michael, as your only child, should be involved in the decisions." "Veronica," I interrupted, "this is not the time or place." Her eyes hardened. Just for a second the mask slipped, and I saw cold calculation underneath. Then she smiled. "Of course. Sorry. I'm just trying to help." The will reading was a week later. Thomas had updated his will 3 months before he died, during one of his more lucid periods. Our attorney, Jonathan Wells, had come to the house, and they had spent hours in Thomas's study. I didn't know what Thomas had changed. He had only told me, "Margaret, I've made sure you're protected. That's all that matters." Jonathan read the will in his downtown office. Michael and Veronica sat across from me, their faces carefully neutral. Jonathan's secretary, a kind older woman named Betty, served coffee and shortbread cookies that no one touched. "The last will and testament of Thomas Arthur Thornton," Jonathan began in his measured attorney voice. "I, being of sound mind and body." The beginning was standard. Small bequests to charities. $10,000 to the animal shelter where Michael had volunteered as a boy. $25,000 to the scholarship fund at Thomas's alma mater. $50,000 to our church. Then came the main provisions. "To my beloved wife Margaret Rose Thornton, I leave our house and all its contents, to remain hers for as long as she lives. I leave her a trust fund of $5 million, structured to provide her with $20,000 per month for living expenses, with the principal protected and untouchable by anyone except Margaret herself." I heard Veronica's sharp intake of breath. $20,000 a month. That was $240,000 a year. Just for living expenses. Jonathan continued, "I leave to my wife 51% of Thornton Industrial Solutions, giving her controlling interest in the company, to do with as she sees fit." Michael sat up straighter. "Wait, what? Dad left her controlling interest?" Jonathan looked up over his reading glasses. "Please hold your questions until I'm finished." He went back to the document. "To my son, Michael James Thornton, I leave 49% of Thornton Industrial Solutions. However, this inheritance comes with conditions." "Conditions?" Michael's voice was tight. "Michael must work at Thornton Industrial Solutions for a minimum of 5 years, starting at an entry-level management position and working his way up based on merit, not nepotism. He must prove himself capable of running the company through his own skills and efforts. If he successfully completes this 5-year period, he will receive his full 49% ownership. If he quits, is fired for cause, or attempts to undermine the company's operations, his inheritance will be reduced to a one-time payment of $500,000, and his shares will revert to Margaret." The room was silent. Jonathan continued, "Furthermore, Michael's wife, Veronica Sterling Thornton, is to have no involvement in the company whatsoever. She may not attend board meetings, may not influence business decisions, and may not receive any financial information about the company beyond what Michael chooses to share from his own earnings. This provision is non-negotiable and is designed to protect the company Thomas built from outside interference." Veronica's face had gone white, then red, then white again. Her hands were clenched so tight her knuckles were bone white. "Additionally," Jonathan read on, "I have created a separate trust fund of $2 million for any future grandchildren. This money is to be used solely for their education and welfare, managed by Margaret until the children reach age 25. Neither Michael nor Veronica may access these funds for any purpose other than direct expenses related to the children's education, health, and basic needs." Jonathan set down the papers and looked at us over his glasses. "There are additional provisions regarding the distribution of assets upon Margaret's death, but those are sealed and will not be revealed until that time. Do you have any questions?" "This is ridiculous," Veronica burst out. Thomas was obviously not in his right mind when he made this will. He was dying, probably on drugs. Mrs. Thornton, Jonathan said icily, I can assure you that Thomas was completely lucid when he updated his will. I have medical documentation from his doctor confirming his mental competence. I also have a video recording of him explaining his wishes in detail. Would you like to see it? Veronica looked at Michael for support. But Michael was staring at the table, his face unreadable. Michael, Veronica hissed, aren't you going to say something? This is insane. Your mother gets everything and we get nothing. We get 49% of a company worth millions, Michael said quietly. That's not nothing. Only if you work there like a common employee for 5 years. And I'm explicitly excluded from everything. Her voice was rising, becoming shrill. This is your father trying to control us from beyond the grave. No, I said, speaking for the first time. This is your father-in-law protecting what he built. Protecting it from people who see it as nothing more than a source of money. Veronica turned to me, her face twisted with rage. You did this. You poisoned him against us. You made him write us out of the will. Veronica, Jonathan said sharply, I'm going to have to ask you to calm down or leave. We'll contest it, she spat. We'll fight this. You're welcome to try, Jonathan said calmly. But I can tell you right now you'll lose. Thomas's will is ironclad. I made sure of it. They left. Veronica stormed out, her high heels clicking angrily on the marble floor. Michael followed, but at the door, he turned back to look at me. There was something in his eyes. Regret. Anger. Confusion. I couldn't tell. Michael, I called out. Your father loved you. Everything he did was because he loved you. Michael nodded slowly. Then he was gone. The days after the will reading were quiet. Too quiet. Michael didn't call. Didn't visit. It was as if I had become invisible to him. I threw myself into learning about the company. I had always known the broad strokes. Thomas discussed business with me every night over dinner for 40 years, but I hadn't been involved in the day-to-day operations. Now, with 51% ownership, I needed to understand everything. The CEO, a man named Robert Chan who had worked with Thomas for 20 years, was patient with me. Mrs. Thornton, your husband built something remarkable here. This company isn't just profitable, it's ethical. We treat our employees well. We source materials responsibly. We give back to the community. Thomas always said business should be about more than just making money. That sounds like Thomas, I said, tears pricking my eyes. I promise you we'll honor his legacy. And we'll make sure Michael learns the business the right way, from the ground up, just like Thomas wanted. Michael started at the company 3 months after Thomas died. He came to work in a suit that probably cost $2,000, driving a car he couldn't really afford, and walked into the factory with an attitude that made my heart sink. Robert called me after the first week. Margaret, we need to talk about Michael. What's wrong? He's not taking the training seriously. He keeps telling people he's the owner's son, that he'll be running the company soon, so they should listen to him. He's undermining supervisors. He's late almost every day. And he's been on his phone constantly, texting someone. I didn't need 3 guesses to know who. Give him time, I said. His father just died. He's adjusting. Margaret, with all respect, every employee here has personal problems. Every employee here has had loss. But they still show up, work hard, and treat people with respect. Michael isn't doing any of those things. Decide. What do you suggest? Let me handle him the way I would handle any new employee who isn't performing. Fair but firm. If he shapes up, great. If he doesn't, he faces consequences. Do what you need to do, Robert. Michael lasted 6 months at the company. 6 months of constant complaints, constant conflicts, constant calls from Robert telling me about Michael's latest screw-up. Michael didn't quit exactly. He just stopped showing up. 3 days of no-shows, no calls, and Robert had to fire him per company policy. The call came late on a Friday afternoon. I was in my garden, trying to find peace among the tomatoes and zucchini I had planted, when my phone rang. "Mom." Michael's voice was flat. "I need to talk to you." "Come over," I said. "I'll make dinner." "Veronica's coming too." My heart sank, but I said, "Of course." They arrived an hour later. Michael looked terrible. Thinner than he should be, with dark circles under his eyes. Veronica looked perfectly put together as always, but there was a hardness to her face that hadn't been there before. I had made pot roast, Thomas's favorite. It filled the house with the smell of home and comfort and better times. We sat at the dining room table, the same table where we'd shared thousands of family meals. But this felt different. Like strangers sitting in the ghosts of our memories. "Mom," Michael began, pushing food around his plate, "I got fired from the company." "I know. They said I wasn't meeting performance expectations." "Were you?" He flushed. "I was doing fine. Robert just had it out for me because he's jealous that I'm the owner's son." "Michael, Robert has worked at that company for 20 years. Your father trusted him completely. Robert doesn't have a jealous bone in his body. He's fair and he's honest, and if he says you weren't meeting expectations, you weren't meeting expectations. So you're taking his side." Michael's voice rose. "Your own son gets fired and you take the side of an employee?" "I'm taking the side of honesty, Michael. Robert showed me the documentation. You were late 23 times in 6 months. You refused to do assignments you deemed beneath you. You argued with supervisors. You spent hours on your phone during work time. Those aren't opinions. Those are facts." Veronica set down her fork with a sharp click. "Margaret, the real issue here is that you're holding Michael's inheritance hostage. You're forcing him to work at a company where he's not respected, where he's treated like any ordinary employee." "He is an ordinary employee," I interrupted. "That was the whole point. Thomas wanted Michael to earn his position, not have it handed to him." "That's ridiculous," Veronica snapped. "He's the owner's son. He should be treated accordingly." "No," I said firmly. "He's an employee who needs to prove himself, just like everyone else." "Well, he can't prove himself if he's been fired, can he?" Veronica's smile was sharp. "Which means, according to the will, Michael's inheritance is reduced to a one-time payment of $500,000, and his shares in the company revert to you." She had been waiting for this, calculating this. This was what she had wanted all along. "Actually," I said carefully, "the will specifies that Michael must be fired for cause or quit voluntarily. Robert and I have agreed that this was a temporary termination due to adjustment issues following Thomas's death. Michael is welcome to return to the company after a 90-day period, during which he should reflect on his behavior and decide if he's ready to commit to the work." Veronica's face went purple. "You can't do that. The will is clear. The will gives me controlling interest in the company, which means I can make employment decisions as I see fit. Michael, you have 90 days. Think about what you really want. Think about who you want to be. Then decide if you're ready to honor your father's memory by actually working for your inheritance instead of just expecting it." Michael stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "I can't believe you're doing this to me. Dad's will was designed to humiliate me, and you're just following through with his plan." "No, son. Your father's will was designed to make you into the man we raised you to be. The man you seem to have forgotten how to be. Because of her." Veronica snarled, pointing at me. "You think I'm the problem. I'm not the one holding our future hostage." "You're absolutely right," I said quietly. "You're not holding the future hostage. You're destroying it. Every time you tell Michael that he's entitled to money he didn't earn, you destroy a little more of the man he could be. Every time you teach him that image matters more than character, you kill another piece of his soul." Thomas saw it. He tried to protect Michael from it. "And you hate him for it." "Get out," Veronica hissed. "Michael, we're leaving." Michael looked at me for a long moment. I saw my little boy in his eyes. The sweet child who used to bring me dandelions and call them flowers. The teenager who had cried on my shoulder when his first girlfriend broke his heart. The young man who had once told me I was his hero. "I'm sorry, Mom," he whispered. Then he followed his wife out the door. I sat alone at the dining room table, surrounded by the uneaten pot roast, and cried. The 90 days came and went. Michael didn't call, didn't come back to the company. On day 91, Jonathan Wells called me. "Margaret, we need to make a decision about Michael's employment status." "He's not coming back, is he?" "No." I received a letter from an attorney representing Michael and Veronica. They're officially declining to return to the company. Which means, per the terms of the will, Michael's shares revert to you, and he receives a one-time payment of $500,000. Closed my eyes. Process it. "I'm sorry, Margaret." "So am I." The check was cut and sent to Michael's attorney. I hoped $500,000 would be enough. Enough to live on, to invest wisely, to build something. Could be if they were careful. If they were smart. If Veronica didn't spend it all on the lifestyle she felt entitled to. But I knew better. I knew that money would be gone within 2 years. Spent on a bigger condo, fancier cars, expensive clothes, exotic vacations, keeping up with the Sterling family's expectations. For 2 years, I barely heard from Michael. Call on my birthday. A brief visit on Christmas Day, where they stayed for exactly 90 minutes before rushing off to Veronica's parents' house. A card on Mother's Day with a generic message and no personal note. I tried to build a life without them. I volunteered at the animal shelter where Michael had once spent his Saturdays. I took art classes. I traveled, something Thomas and I had always planned to do but never had time for. I saw Italy and France and Greece, standing in ancient ruins and wishing desperately that Thomas was there to share it with me. The company thrived. Robert Chen proved to be an excellent CEO, even better than Thomas had hoped. We expanded into new markets. We developed innovative products. We treated our employees well and our profits showed it. Good ethics, as Thomas had always insisted, was good business. I lived comfortably on my $20,000 monthly allowance, though I didn't need nearly that much. Most of it I donated to charities. The principle of the trust grew untouched. The value of the company increased year after year. On paper, I was becoming wealthier by the millions. But I was lonely. The house was too quiet. The garden was too big. The dining room table was set for one, and I ate my meals in silence, remembering when it had been set for 3. Then, 3 years after Thomas died, I got a call from Michael. "Mom, Veronica is pregnant." Joy surged through me, followed immediately by fear. A grandchild. Thomas's grandchild, who he would never meet. "Oh, Michael. That's wonderful news." "Yeah." He sounded tired. "Listen, Mom, I was wondering if we could come by to talk about the baby and things." "Of course. Anytime." They came the next day. Veronica's pregnancy was just starting to show, a small bump under her expensive maternity blouse. She looked radiant. Michael looked exhausted. We sat in the living room, the same room where Thomas had read bedtime stories to little Michael, where we had opened Christmas presents, where we had celebrated and grieved and lived our lives. "We're having a boy," Veronica announced. "We're going to name him Thomas, after Michael's father." Tears sprang to my eyes. "He would have loved that." "Yeah," Michael said softly. "I think he would have." "Mom," Veronica said, her voice taking on that sweet tone she used when she wanted something, "we've been thinking about the baby's future. The trust fund that Thomas set up. $2 million for education and welfare. We'd like to access some of that now, to prepare properly for the baby." And there it was. "The trust is very specific," I said carefully. "It can only be used for direct expenses related to the children's education, health, and basic needs. Once the baby is born and has expenses, we can discuss how to access the funds appropriately." "But we have expenses now," Veronica insisted. "We need to move to a bigger place. The baby will need a nursery, furniture, clothes. Those are things parents typically pay for themselves," I said gently. The trust is for education and significant health expenses, not for upgrading your lifestyle. So you're saying no? Veronica's voice went flat. I'm saying the trust has rules set by Thomas, and I have to follow them. Convenient rules, Veronica muttered. Veronica, Michael started. No, Michael. Your mother has all the money. Your mother has all the power. Your mother controls everything. And we're supposed to just accept whatever scraps she deigns to give us. Veronica, that's not fair, I said. Fair? She laughed harshly. You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been Thomas leaving the company to his son instead of to his widow. Fair would have been trusting his own child instead of treating him like an incompetent child. Thomas trusted Michael to grow into the man he needed to be, I said. He set up the will to encourage that growth. No, he set up the will to punish Michael for not being perfect, for not meeting his impossible standards, for daring to love me. That last sentence hung in the air. Thomas never objected to you, Veronica, I said quietly. He objected to what you were doing to Michael. There's a difference. Right. Blame me. I'm sure that's easier than admitting your precious Thomas was a controlling, manipulative man who couldn't stand to see his son independent and happy. That's enough, Michael said suddenly. Veronica, we're leaving. Michael. Now. They left. Again. And again, I sat in my empty house and wondered how everything had gone so wrong. Baby Thomas, they called him Tommy, was born 7 months later. I went to the hospital, held my grandson, and fell completely in love. He was perfect. Tiny and red and squalling and absolutely perfect. He has Thomas's eyes, I whispered. Yeah, Michael said, his voice thick with emotion. He does. For a few weeks things were better. I visited Tommy regularly, brought baby clothes and toys, rocked him while Michael and Veronica napped. Felt my heart begin to heal. But the peace didn't last. Veronica wanted things. A bigger condo, they needed more space for the baby. A better car. The BMW wasn't safe enough for a child. A nanny. Veronica couldn't possibly handle a baby by herself. Private childcare. Only the best for Thomas's grandson. Each request was framed as being for Tommy. Each request was designed to make me feel guilty if I said no. Each request came with the implication that I had plenty of money and was being selfish by not sharing it. I paid for some things. The car seat because Tommy's safety was non-negotiable. Medical expenses, covered by the trust. But I said no to the nanny. No to the bigger condo. No to the lifestyle upgrades disguised as baby necessities. And each no drove a bigger wedge between us. Michael stopped bringing Tommy to visit. It's hard to get him out of the house, he'd say. Maybe you could come here. But when I went there, Veronica made sure I knew I was an intrusion. She'd hover, criticize the way I held Tommy, suggest I wasn't competent to be left alone with him, make comments about how older people sometimes forgot things. Slowly, cruelly, I was being cut out of my grandson's life. The final straw came when Tommy was 18 months old. I hadn't seen him in 6 weeks. 6 weeks of excuses and cancellations and, we're just so busy. I drove to their condo unannounced. Knocked on the door. Heard Tommy's delighted laughter inside. The sound that kept me going through the loneliest days. Veronica answered the door. Her face went cold when she saw me. Margaret, this isn't a good time. I just want to see my grandson. 5 minutes. We're in the middle of something. Veronica, please. It's been 6 weeks. She sighed dramatically. Fine. 5 minutes. But don't give him any sugar. He's been hyper lately. I walked into the condo. It was beautiful. New furniture, new artwork, new everything. Clearly they'd found money somewhere. Probably credit cards. Probably debts piling up. Just like the $500,000 that had vanished within 18 months. Tommy was in his playroom, surrounded by more toys than 10 children could play with. When he saw me, his face lit up. Gamma! My heart soared. He remembered me. I spent a precious 30 minutes with him, reading books, stacking blocks, soaking up his little boy giggles. Then Veronica appeared in the doorway. "Time's up, Margaret. I thought you said 5 minutes. I was being generous." I bit back my response. Losing my temper would only give her ammunition. "Tommy, sweetie, Grandma has to go now. But I'll see you soon, okay? Gamma, stay." Tommy reached for me. "I can't, baby. But I love you so much." "Actually," Veronica said as I stood up, "I need to talk to you about visits going forward." "Okay. Michael and I have decided that it's better if you don't drop by unannounced. It disrupts Tommy's schedule. So from now on, you need to call ahead and get permission before coming." "Permission? To see my own grandson? And honestly," Veronica continued, "we think once a month is sufficient for visits. Tommy is at a developmental stage where too many different people can be confusing." "Once a month? Veronica, I'm his grandmother. And we're his parents. We make the decisions about who he sees and when." I looked past her to Michael, who was standing in the hallway, listening but not interfering, not defending me, not standing up for his child's relationship with his grandmother. "Michael," said. He looked at the floor. "Mom, Veronica has been reading a lot of parenting books. She knows what's best for Tommy. What's best for Tommy is knowing his family, knowing where he comes from. What's best for Tommy," Veronica said sharply, "is not being exposed to someone who openly resents his mother and creates tension in his home." "I don't resent you, Veronica. I just want to be part of my grandson's life. Once a month. With advance permission. Those are our terms." Left. I cried all the way home. And I started to realize that I was losing Michael completely. He had become a man I didn't recognize. A man who let his wife dictate his relationship with his own mother. A man who valued peace in his marriage over everything else. The monthly visits were torture. Tommy was growing and changing, and I was missing it all. His first words, his first steps, all the milestones were happening without me. When I did see him, Veronica never left us alone. She supervised every interaction, corrected everything I did, and cut each visit short. I thought about fighting. I researched grandparents' rights. Talked to Jonathan Wells about my options. But in the end, I couldn't do it. Taking Michael and Veronica to court would destroy whatever fragile connection remained. It would traumatize Tommy. It would make everything worse. So I endured. I showed up once a month, spent my supervised hour with Tommy, and left with my heart breaking. Then came the Christmas that changed everything. It was Tommy's third Christmas. I hadn't seen him in 2 months. Veronica had cancelled both November visits with increasingly flimsy excuses. But she had called in early December with an unexpected invitation. "Margaret, we're having Christmas dinner at our place this year. We'd like you to come. Michael thinks it's important for Tommy to have his grandmother there." I was so surprised and relieved that I didn't question it. "I'd love to come. What can I bring?" "Nothing. We have it all covered. Just bring yourself. Dinner is at 5 p.m. I spent the days before Christmas shopping for the perfect gifts for Tommy. Educational toys, books, clothes in the next size up. I wrapped each one carefully with bright paper and big bows. I arrived at exactly 5 p.m. on Christmas Eve, my arms full of presents. Veronica answered the door wearing a red dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. The condo was decorated like a magazine spread. Professional, expensive, perfect. "Margaret, you're here. Come in." I walked into what felt like a party. The condo was full of people. Veronica's parents, the Sterlings, holding court in the living room. Veronica's brother and his wife. Several couples I didn't recognize. Michael stood near the Christmas tree, wearing a sweater that looked designer, holding a glass of wine. "Mom," he said when he saw me. "Thanks for coming." Tommy ran up to me, adorable in a little suit. "Gamma presents." "Yes, baby." Gamma brought presents. "Where should I put them?" "Just set them by the tree," Veronica said. "We'll open gifts after dinner." I placed my carefully wrapped packages among the mountain of presents already there. Designer bags, elegant boxes, gifts that screamed money. Mr. Sterling approached me, his hand extended. "Margaret, so glad you could join us. I don't believe you've met my son Bradley and his wife Amanda." I shook hands, made small talk, and felt increasingly uncomfortable. This didn't feel like a family Christmas. Felt like a performance. Dinner was catered. Of course it was. The table was set with china and crystal, 9 places carefully arranged. I found myself seated at the far end, between Veronica's brother, who ignored me, and a woman I'd been introduced to but whose name I'd already forgotten. The food was excellent. The conversation was all about money. Investments, real estate, market trends, vacation properties. I ate quietly, listening, wondering why I was really here. Then, after dessert, as everyone settled into the living room with coffee and cordials, Veronica stood up. "Everyone, I want to thank you for coming tonight. Christmas is a time for family, for honesty, for making important decisions." She paused, her hand on Michael's shoulder. "Michael and I have something we need to discuss with everyone, especially Margaret." My stomach dropped. "As you know," Veronica continued, her voice clear and projecting to the whole room, "Michael's mother has been living alone in that big old house since Thomas died. She's getting older. We're worried about her safety, her health, her ability to care for herself properly." What was happening? "We've been discussing it for months," Michael said, standing next to Veronica. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "And we think it's time Mom moved into a more appropriate living situation." "A facility," Veronica clarified. "There's a lovely assisted living community just outside the city, Shady Pines. They have excellent care, activities, medical staff on site. It's really the best option." The room was silent. Everyone was looking at me, waiting. "I don't understand," I said slowly. "You want me to move into a nursing home?" "Assisted living," Veronica corrected, as if that made it better. "It's not a nursing home. It's a community for seniors who need support." "But I don't need support. I'm perfectly capable." "Mom," Michael interrupted, "you're almost 70 years old. You live alone. You're rattling around in that big house. What if you fall? What if you have a medical emergency? I'm 69, not 99. I'm in excellent health. My doctor—" "Your doctor is probably too polite to tell you the truth," Veronica said. "Michael and I have taken the liberty of touring Shady Pines. It's beautiful. They have craft rooms, a library, organized trips. You'd have friends your own age. You wouldn't be lonely." "I'm not lonely." "Of course you are," Veronica said with fake sympathy. "You've been alone for 4 years. You rarely see Tommy. Because you don't let me see him. Because you're not reliable, Margaret. You get confused. You forget things. Last month, you forgot Tommy's birthday." That was a lie. I had sent a card and a gift, which Veronica had probably hidden. But I couldn't prove it. "This is ridiculous," I said, standing up. "I'm not moving into any facility. I'm perfectly fine where I am." "Are you?" Mr. Sterling spoke up from his position near the fireplace. "Veronica has shared some concerning stories with us. Forgetting appointments, repeating yourself, confusion about dates and times. More lies. All lies." "Michael," I turned to my son, "you know this isn't true. You know I'm perfectly competent." Michael looked at his shoes. "Mom, I think you just don't see it. Sometimes people with cognitive decline don't realize they're declining." Cognitive decline. They were saying I had cognitive decline. "I want to talk to you privately," I said to Michael. "Anything you want to say to my husband, you can say in front of all of us," Veronica said. "We're all family here. We're all concerned about your well-being." "Yes," Mrs. Sterling added, her voice dripping with false concern. "We just want what's best for you, Margaret. At your age, independence can be dangerous." My age. As if 69 was ancient. As if I were falling apart. "And honestly," Veronica continued, "that house is far too much for you to manage. Needs maintenance, updates, care. Michael and I have been discussing it, and we think the best solution is for you to sell the house. Use that money to pay for your care at Shady Pines. The place isn't cheap, but you'd get a few good years out of the sale price. There it was. The house. They wanted the house. No, I said firmly. Mom, Michael started. No, I repeated. I'm not selling my house. I'm not moving into any facility. I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself, and I'm not going to let you gaslight me into thinking otherwise. Gaslight. Veronica laughed. That's a very trendy psychological term for someone who claims to be so sharp. Did you learn that on the internet? This conversation is over, I said, moving toward the door where I'd left my coat. Michael, call me when you're ready to have an honest conversation. Veronica, thank you for dinner. Margaret, wait, Mr. Sterling said. We're not finished discussing this. You're not finished. Merry Christmas, everyone. I grabbed my coat and purse. Tommy ran up to me, confused by the tension. Gamma leaving. Yes, baby. Gamma has to go. Open presents. You open your presents with Mommy and Daddy. Grandma will see you soon. Actually, Veronica said coldly, I don't think that's a good idea. If Margaret can't see reason, if she's going to cause scenes and upset Tommy, maybe it's better if she doesn't visit for a while. I looked at Michael. You're going to let her say that? You're going to let her keep me from my grandson? Michael's face was anguished, but he said nothing. He just stood there, Veronica's hand on his arm, surrounded by her family, and let it happen. Left. I drove home through streets decorated with Christmas lights, past houses full of families celebrating together. I sat in my driveway for 20 minutes before I could make myself go inside. The house was dark, silent. The small tree I'd put up in the corner of the living room seemed pathetic. The gifts I'd bought for Tommy, now abandoned at Veronica's condo, felt like another loss. I went to bed that Christmas Eve and didn't sleep. I lay there in the dark, in the bed I'd shared with Thomas for 40 years, and felt completely alone. But as dawn broke on Christmas morning, something changed inside me. The fog of grief and confusion and hurt lifted, and clarity took its place. They had made a mistake. Big one. They thought I was weak. They thought I was an easy target. They thought they could manipulate me into giving up my home, my autonomy, my connection to my grandson. They thought I was just a lonely old widow with no power and no options. They were wrong. And it was time to show them exactly how wrong. The day after Christmas, I called Jonathan Wells. Jonathan, I need to see you immediately. Margaret, is everything all right? No. But it's about to be. I drove to his office downtown. Jonathan's secretary, Betty, took one look at my face and immediately brought me into the conference room. What happened? Jonathan asked, closing the door behind us. I told him everything. The dinner. The accusations. The nursing home plan. The threats to keep me from Tommy. Jonathan's face grew darker with each sentence. They've made a serious miscalculation, he said when I finished. Do they have any idea about your actual financial situation? I don't think Michael does. I've never discussed it in detail with him. He knows I get $20,000 a month from the trust, but I don't think he has any concept of the principal or the company's value. And Veronica? She definitely doesn't know. She thinks I'm living on an allowance, keeping the company going but not particularly wealthy. Jonathan pulled out a file. Margaret, let me show you something. The value of Thornton Industrial Solutions has grown significantly in the past 4 years. Your 51% is currently worth approximately $87 million. He nodded. I had known it was substantial, but hearing the number still made me catch my breath. Combined with your trust fund, your investments, and your other assets, your total net worth is approximately $105 million. $105 million. And they thought I was a helpless old woman who needed to be put in a home. Jonathan, I need you to help me with something. Something that's going to seem extreme. I'm listening. I want to give Veronica and Michael exactly what they think they want. I want to let them believe they've won. And then I want to show them exactly what they've lost. Jonathan smiled slowly. What did you have in mind? We spent the next 3 hours planning. By the time I left Jonathan's office, I had a strategy. It was risky. It was potentially painful. But it was the only way to make Michael see what he had become. The first step was to go silent. Completely silent. No more attempts to contact Michael or Tommy. No more monthly visit requests. No more reaching out. I would become the difficult, isolated old woman they were painting me to be. Took 2 weeks for Veronica to reach out. She called, her voice saccharine sweet. Margaret, how are you? We've been worried. You left so abruptly on Christmas. I'm fine, Veronica. I want to apologize if we seemed harsh. We're just concerned about you. Have you given any more thought to Shady Pines? I have some brochures I could bring over. Actually, Veronica, I have been thinking about it. You might be right. Maybe I'm not as capable as I thought. I could practically hear her smile through the phone. Oh, Margaret. I'm so glad you're being reasonable. Why don't Michael and I come by tomorrow? We can discuss the details. All right. They arrived at 10 a.m. Michael looked uncomfortable. Veronica looked triumphant. Margaret, you've made the right decision, she said, settling into my living room like she owned it. Shady Pines is going to be perfect for you. How much does it cost? Asked. Well, the buy-in is $200,000, and then it's $5,000 a month for the care package we recommend. $200,000, plus $60,000 a year. Money they thought they'd get from selling my house. And the house? I asked quietly. We've already contacted a realtor, Michael said, pulling out papers. Given the location and size, we think we can get $850,000 for it. After the buy-in and the first year of care, you'd have about $600,000 left. That should last you. Well, quite a while. Quite a while. They were literally calculating how long I'd live. And Tommy? Asked. Would I be able to see him if I moved to Shady Pines? Of course, Veronica said, though her tone suggested otherwise. We'll bring him to visit. The facility has lovely visiting areas. Okay, I said. I'll do it. On one condition. What's that? Veronica asked warily. I want to spend New Year's with Tommy. One last holiday in this house before I sell it. Just Tommy, Michael, and me. The way it used to be. Michael and Veronica exchanged looks. I don't know if that's a good idea, Veronica started. Please, I said, letting my voice tremble. Just a few hours. I'll cook dinner. Michael's favorite pot roast. Tommy can play in the garden one last time. Then after the new year, I'll sign whatever papers you need me to sign. Mom, Michael said gently. I think that sounds nice. Veronica opened her mouth to object, but Michael gave her a look. Veronica, it's the least we can do. Fine, she said tightly. But I'll need to be there. No, Michael said firmly, surprising us both. Just Mom, Tommy, and me. The way she asked. Victory flashed across Veronica's face. She was getting what she wanted, the house, my compliance. She could afford to let Michael have this. All right, but just for a few hours. And Michael, don't let her fill Tommy up on sugar. They left. I immediately called Jonathan. It's set. New Year's Day. That's when I'll tell him. Are you sure you want to do this? I'm sure. If there's any chance of getting my son back, this is it. New Year's Day arrived cold and clear. Michael came to the door at noon with Tommy, who ran into my arms. Gamma. House. Yes, baby. This is Grandma's house. Do you remember it? Big. It is big, isn't it? Would you like to play in the garden? Yes. I bundled him in his coat and took him outside while Michael watched from the doorway. Tommy ran around the dormant flower beds, kicked leaves, chased a squirrel. He was so happy, so free, so completely himself. After an hour of playing, we came inside for lunch. I made grilled cheese sandwiches, Tommy's favorite, and tomato soup. We sat at the kitchen table, the three of us, and for a moment it felt like family again. Then Tommy went down for his nap in what used to be Michael's room. I tucked him in, kissed his forehead, and watched him drift off with his thumb in his mouth. Michael and I sat in the living room. He looked around at the familiar space. The old couch, the family photos on the walls, the Afghan my mother had crocheted draped over the armchair. "I have a lot of memories in this house," he said softly. "So do I. Mom, I'm sorry about how things have gone between us." "Are you?" He flinched. "Yes. I know I haven't been the son I should have been. I know Dad would be disappointed in me." "Your father loved you, Michael. He was never disappointed in you. Frustrated sometimes, yes. Sad sometimes. But never disappointed. I let him down. You let yourself down. There's a difference." We sat in silence for a moment. "Michael, before I agree to this nursing home plan, there's something you need to know. Something I haven't told you." "What is it?" I pulled out a folder Jonathan had prepared for me. Inside were financial statements, company valuations, trust documentation. Everything. "Open it," I said. Michael opened the folder. I watched his face as he processed what he was seeing. Confusion. Disbelief. His hands started to shake. "This says, Mom, this says you're worth $105 million, I finished. "Approximately. That can't be right." "It is. Your father's company has grown exponentially. My 51% is worth $87 million. The trust fund principal is $12 million. I have other investments and assets worth about $6 million. So yes, Michael, I'm worth $105 million. He was staring at the papers like they were written in a foreign language. "But you said, you thought I was barely getting by on $20,000 a month. You thought I was a poor old widow who needed to sell her house to afford a nursing home. But why? Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I wanted to see if you would do the right thing without knowing. Your father set up his will to test you. To see if you would work for your inheritance, learn the business, become the man he knew you could be. You failed that test, so I created another one. I wanted to see if you would take care of me out of love, or if you would try to take advantage of me the moment you thought I was vulnerable." Michael's face went white. "The nursing home. That's what this is about. That's what this is about. Tell me, Michael, whose idea was it? Veronica's or yours?" "It was." We were both worried. "Don't lie to me." "Not now." "Whose idea was it to put me in Shady Pines and sell my house?" He closed his eyes. "Veronica's." "But Mom, she genuinely thought she could get $850,000 from this house. She genuinely thought she could manipulate me into signing my life away because she spent the past year painting me as confused and declining. She's been lying about me to everyone. Her family, your friends, probably people in the neighborhood. Creating a narrative that I'm not competent so that when she announced her plan, everyone would agree it was for my own good. That's not. Michael, she's been planning this for at least 6 months. Probably since Tommy's first birthday when I started pushing back on her demands. She realized I wasn't going to be the compliant grandmother, funding her lifestyle and then conveniently dying and leaving you everything. So she decided to neutralize me, put me in a home, take control of this house, and position herself to go after my trust fund next. She wouldn't. She would. Yes. Look at the timeline. I pulled out another document Jonathan had prepared. 6 months ago, she started making comments to people about my forgetfulness. 3 months ago, she started limiting my access to Tommy, saying I wasn't reliable. 2 months ago, she consulted with Shady Pines. 1 month ago, she contacted a realtor about this house, before ever talking to me about moving. She's been orchestrating this carefully, Michael. And you've been helping her. I was trying to do what was best for you. No, you were trying to keep peace with your wife, even if it meant sacrificing your mother. Michael stood up abruptly, walked to the window, stared out at the garden where Tommy had played. What do you want me to say? That I screwed up. I screwed up. I know I did. But I can't change it now. Can't you? What do you mean? Michael, you're 43 years old. You're not a child. You're not a victim. You're a man who makes choices. Every day you choose who you're going to be. For the past 6 years, since you met Veronica, you've been choosing to be a man I don't recognize. A man who values money over integrity. A man who lets his wife dictate his relationship with his family. A man who was willing to institutionalize his own mother to get his hands on her house. That's not fair. It's completely fair. And it's the truth. But Michael, here's what you need to understand. You still have a choice. Right now, today, you can choose to be different. You can choose to stand up for what's right instead of what's convenient. You can choose your son's future over your wife's ambitions. What are you saying? I'm saying it's time for you to decide what kind of man you want to be. The kind your father was proud to raise, or the kind Veronica has molded you into. I love Veronica. She's my wife, the mother of my child. I know. And I'm not asking you to leave her or divorce her. I'm asking you to set boundaries, to demand honesty, to insist on integrity in your marriage and your life. Because right now, Michael, you're teaching Tommy that it's okay to lie, manipulate, and abuse people if you want something from them. That's not what I'm teaching him. It's exactly what you're teaching him. Children learn from what they see, not from what we say. And what Tommy has seen is his father agreeing to put his grandmother in a home so they can sell her house. What he's seen is his mother limiting his grandmother's access to him while lying about the reasons. What he's learned is that people are disposable when they're no longer useful. Michael sat down heavily, his head in his hands. I don't know what to do. Yes, you do. You've always known. You just haven't had the courage to do it. So what happens now? He asked quietly. Now you go home and tell Veronica the truth. Tell her I'm not selling the house. I'm not moving into Shady Pines. I'm not the vulnerable old woman she thought she could manipulate. She's going to be furious. I imagine she will be. But that's between you and her. You need to handle your marriage, Michael. You need to decide if you want a partner or a puppet master. And if I can't, if I go home and nothing changes, then I'll respect your choice. But you won't see another dime from me. You won't inherit anything when I die. Tommy's trust will be managed by an independent trustee who will ensure the money is used properly. And you'll have to live with the consequences of choosing Veronica's ambitions over your own integrity. Michael looked up at me, tears in his eyes. You'd really cut me off. Your own son. I'd really protect myself from people who see me as nothing more than a source of money, even if one of those people is my son. Your father tried to teach you with his will. I tried to teach you with patience and boundaries and love. But we've both failed. So now you have to teach yourself. You have to decide who you want to be. Tommy's voice called from upstairs. Gamma. Daddy. We're down here, baby, I called back. He appeared at the top of the stairs, sleepy and tousled. Michael went up to get him, and I heard them talking softly. Then they came down together, Tommy on Michael's hip. Gamma, more play? Tommy asked hopefully. A little more play, I agreed. Then Daddy needs to take you home. We spent another hour in the garden. Tommy ran and played while Michael and I watched in silence. The January sun was weak but determined, and the sky was that brilliant winter blue that makes everything seem sharp and clear. When it was time for them to leave, Tommy hugged me tight. Love, Gamma. I love you too, baby. So much. See you soon. I looked at Michael. That's up to your daddy. Michael met my eyes. I saw fear there and confusion and something else. Something that might have been determination. Yes, Tommy. We'll see Grandma soon. They left. I stood in the doorway and watched Michael buckle Tommy into his car seat, watched them drive away, and wondered if I'd made a terrible mistake. But I didn't hear from Michael that night, or the next day, or the day after that. On the third day, Veronica called. Her voice was shaking with rage. What did you say to Michael? I told him the truth. You told him lies. You manipulated him. He came home and, "You've destroyed everything." "What did he say, Veronica?" "He said we're not selling your house. He said we need to talk about our relationship. He said he's been enabling me to be someone he's not proud of." "What did you do to him?" "I showed him who he was becoming. And apparently he didn't like what he saw." "This isn't over, Margaret. I'll fight you. I'll sue you. You'll what?" "Sue me for refusing to be institutionalized. For refusing to sell my own house. For having more money than you thought. I have excellent attorneys, Veronica. The best money can buy. And unlike you, I actually have money. If you want to fight me, bring it on. But I promise you, you'll lose." She hung up. I sat in my quiet house and waited. 2 days later, Michael knocked on my door. He was alone. "Can I come in?" "Of course." We sat in the living room again. He looked terrible, like he hadn't slept in days. "I've asked Veronica to move out," he said without preamble. My heart stopped. "What?" "Not permanently. Just for a while. I need time to think. We need time apart to figure out if our marriage can survive this." "Oh, Michael. Don't," he said, holding up his hand. "Don't apologize or feel guilty. You were right. About all of it. Veronica has been planning to put you in that home for months. When I confronted her, she admitted it. She said it was practical. That we needed the money from your house because we're in debt." "How much debt?" $180,000 in credit cards. Another $50,000 in personal loans. The $500,000 Dad left me is gone. Every penny. Spent on cars and clothes and vacations and keeping up with the Sterlings." "Oh, Michael. And Mom, there's more. Veronica's father has been pressuring us. He said if Michael Thornton couldn't support his family properly, maybe Veronica should reconsider the marriage. He literally said she should upgrade. Like I'm a car or a phone." "That's horrible." "It is. And I didn't see it. I didn't see any of it. I was so busy trying to keep Veronica happy, trying to live up to her family's standards, that I forgot who I was. I forgot what Dad taught me. I forgot that you and Dad raised me to value character, not possessions." He started crying. Deep, racking sobs that shook his whole body. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I let Dad down. I let you down. I became exactly the kind of man he was trying to prevent me from becoming." I moved to sit beside him, put my arm around him like I did when he was small. "It's not too late, Michael. You can still choose to be different." "But how? How do I fix this? I have a massive debt. Failing marriage. A son who deserves better than what I've been showing him. One step at a time. First, we deal with the debt." "Mom, no. I can't take any more money from you. I don't deserve it." "You're right, you don't. But Tommy deserves a father who isn't drowning in debt. And honestly, Michael, $230,000 is nothing to me. It's a fraction of what I have. Let me pay off your debts on one condition." "What condition?" "You get a job. Real job. Not at my company. I want you to earn this independently. You work hard. You live within your means. You show Tommy what it looks like to be a man of integrity and character." "What about Veronica?" "That's up to you. If she's willing to change, if she's willing to value the right things, then maybe your marriage can survive. But Michael, you can't sacrifice yourself on the altar of her ambitions. You have to set boundaries. You have to demand better. And if she won't change, then you'll know you tried. And you'll have to make the choice that's best for you and Tommy." Michael nodded slowly. "Thank you, Mom. For not giving up on me. For still believing I could be better. I never gave up on you. I just gave up on enabling you. There's a difference." We sat together in silence. Outside, the January wind rattled the windows. But inside, in my warm living room, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. The next 6 months were difficult. Michael moved back home with me temporarily, while he and Veronica went to marriage counseling. I paid off their debts quietly, through a trust fund designed to look like a debt consolidation program. Michael got a job at a rival manufacturing company, starting in middle management but working his way up based on his own merit. Veronica fought the changes at first. She threatened divorce. She played the victim to her family and friends. But slowly, as the counseling continued, she started to see what she had become. Or at least she pretended to. I wasn't sure I trusted her. But I trusted Michael to make his own decisions. Tommy came to stay with me every week. I taught him to garden, to cook simple meals, to appreciate the small things. He was a sweet, bright little boy, and I was determined that he would learn the right values. One evening in June, 7 months after that terrible Christmas dinner, Michael and Veronica came to visit together. They sat on my couch, holding hands, and Michael spoke first. "Mom, we wanted to tell you something. Veronica and I have decided to stay together. But things are going to be different." "Different how?" Veronica spoke up, her voice quiet. "Margaret, I owe you an apology. Real one. I've been selfish, materialistic, and cruel. I saw you as an obstacle instead of as Michael's mother, as Tommy's grandmother, as a person deserving of respect. I let my upbringing, my family's values, dictate how I treated you. And it was wrong. Completely wrong." I studied her face, looking for sincerity. Found something there, shame maybe, genuine regret, but also something guarded. She was saying what she needed to say. Whether she believed it was another question. "I accept your apology," I said carefully. "But Veronica, apologies are just words. What matters is what comes next. What changes?" "Everything," Michael said. "We've sold the condo. We're moving into a smaller place, something we can actually afford on my salary. We've cut up the credit cards. We're living on a budget. And Veronica is going back to school to get her teaching degree. She wants to work, to contribute, to be more than just my wife and Tommy's mother." "That's wonderful," I said and meant it. "And Mom," Michael continued, "I want to say something else. Sorry, not just for the nursing home thing but for everything. For the past 6 years. For letting Veronica come between us. For valuing money over family. For forgetting who Dad raised me to be. Can't take it back. But I promise I'm going to spend the rest of my life being the son you and Dad deserved." Tears filled my eyes. That's all I've ever wanted. We had dinner that night. Pot roast, Thomas's favorite. And for the first time in years it felt like family. Tommy sat in his booster seat between Michael and Veronica, babbling happily about his day. Veronica helped me clear the dishes. Michael did the drying while I washed. They left at 8 p.m., with Tommy asleep in Veronica's arms. At the door, Michael hugged me tight. "I love you, Mom. Thank you for not giving up on me." "I love you too, son. Always." After they left, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my porch, looking at the stars. I thought about Thomas, about the will he'd created to try to save Michael, about the test I'd designed to wake my son up. Both plans had nearly failed. Both had nearly driven Michael further away instead of bringing him back. But in the end, desperation had forced Michael to see the truth. The threat of losing everything, his marriage, his son, his mother, his integrity, had finally broken through the fog of materialism and entitlement that Veronica had created. It's been 3 years since that Christmas dinner. 3 years since Veronica announced she was putting me in a nursing home. Tommy is 6 now. He comes to visit every Sunday. He helps me in the garden and we make cookies together. He's learning to read, and his favorite books are the same ones I read to Michael when he was small. Michael is thriving at his job. He was promoted to VP of Operations last year. He makes good money, not millions but enough to live comfortably, save for the future, take modest vacations. He talks about his work with pride, and I hear Thomas in his voice. Veronica finished her teaching degree and now works at a public elementary school. It seems changed. Not completely. I still see flashes of her old self, the materialistic girl who married Michael for his inheritance. But she's trying. She's teaching Tommy to read, to be kind, to think about others. And she treats me with respect. Or at least she acts respectfully. I've learned there's a difference. As for me, I'm still here in my house living my life. I'm 72 now. Volunteer. I travel. I read. Garden. I manage my investments. I donate generously to charities. And I'm redoing my will. Michael doesn't know it yet, but when I die, he'll inherit everything. All $105 million. All the company shares. All the investments. Everything. But, and this is important, the inheritance comes with conditions. Just like Thomas's will did. Michael must continue working at his job for 5 more years, proving he doesn't need my money to be successful. He must live modestly, save wisely, and give generously. He must raise Tommy with the values his grandfather would have been proud of. If he does all of that when I'm gone, he'll have the financial freedom to do anything he wants. To retire early. To start his own company. To give Tommy opportunities beyond anything we could have imagined. But if he falls back into his old patterns, if the money corrupts him, if he lets Veronica's materialism take over again, if he fails to be the man Thomas and I raised him to be, then the entire inheritance goes to charity. Michael gets $1. Tommy's trust is protected, but everything else disappears. Jonathan thinks I'm being too harsh. Margaret, he said when I told him my plans, don't you think Michael has proven himself? He's proven he can change when he's desperate, I replied. He's proven he can be better when his back is against the wall. But can he stay better when he has $105 million? That's the real test. You don't trust him. I trust him as much as I can. But I also trust that money reveals character. And I want to make sure the character it reveals is the right one. I haven't told Michael any of this. He thinks my will leaves him a comfortable inheritance, maybe $5 million, and the rest to charity. He's okay with that. He's told me multiple times that he doesn't expect anything, that I should spend my money however I want. That's a good sign. But I'll be watching. From this life and, if there's anything after, from the next. I'll be watching to see what kind of man my son becomes when he thinks no one is testing him anymore. Because that's when we show our true selves. Not when we're being watched and judged, but when we think we're free to be whoever we want. The night of that Christmas dinner, Veronica thought she was announcing my decline. She thought she was taking control. She thought I was weak and vulnerable and easy to manipulate. She was wrong. And in trying to institutionalize me, she accidentally gave me the gift of clarity. She showed me exactly who she was, who Michael had become, and what needed to change. Sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in our worst moments. Sometimes we need to hit rock bottom to find the strength to climb back up. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most are actually giving us the opportunity to save ourselves. Veronica gave me that opportunity. And through the pain and betrayal and heartbreak, I found myself again. Found my strength. I found my voice. And I helped my son find his. That's worth more than $105 million. That's worth everything. My name is Margaret Rose Thornton. I am 72 years old. And I am nobody's victim. Not anymore. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.